I used to think the worst thing that could happen to you in a foreign country was losing your passport, but I was wrong. The worst thing is waking up alive and realizing you can't afford it. That the very thing that saved your life is now the thing that's going to destroy it. I learned that lesson in a Bangkok hospital room, staring at a bill with more zeros than I'd ever seen in my life. And the woman I loved. She was standing right there, watching me drown. If stories like this make you think twice, hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know where you're tuning in from. This story was shared with us by a retired Canadian engineer who wanted the world to know what really happens when you get sick abroad and when trust becomes the most expensive thing you'll ever lose. I woke up in my apartment in Bangkok drenched in sweat, and not the usual kind from the broken air conditioner. This was different. My head felt like it was splitting open, and my chest burned every time I took a breath. I tried to sit up, but my vision blurred. Somjai, my girlfriend, was asleep beside me. She looked so peaceful. Her black hair fanned out across the pillow. I didn't want to wake her, but when I tried to stand, my legs buckled. That's when she opened her eyes. She sat up fast, her face full of concern. She pressed her hand to my forehead and pulled it back like I was on fire. "Leland, you burning," she said, her English breaking under panic. "We go hospital now." I remember thinking it was probably just the flu. I'd been in Thailand for 2 years, and I'd had my share of stomach bugs and heat exhaustion. But this felt different, heavier, like my body was giving up. Somjai was already dressed, pulling me to my feet. She kept saying we needed to go to the hospital. I argued. "I just need rest, babe. Some water. I'll be fine by morning." But she wasn't listening. She called a taxi, and within 20 minutes we were speeding through the streets of Bangkok at 4 in the morning. I remember looking out the window, watching the city blur past and thinking how strange it was to feel this weak. I was 58 years old, sure, but I'd always been healthy. I worked as a CAD engineer back in Thompson, Manitoba for 30 years. I retired early, took my pension and moved to Thailand to finally live. And now I was being rushed to a hospital in a country where I barely spoke the language, feeling like my body was shutting down. When we got to the hospital, everything moved fast. Too fast. Nurses surrounded me, asking questions in English I could barely focus on. Somjai answered for me. They put me on a stretcher and rolled me through bright white hallways that smelled like disinfectant and fear. I kept trying to tell them I was fine, that I just needed some medicine and rest. But no one was listening. They hooked me up to machines, took my blood, shined lights in my eyes. A doctor came in, a young guy with perfect English and a serious face. "Mr. Leland, your heart is in distress. You're going into septic shock. If we'd waited another hour, you might not have made it." I looked at Somjai. She was standing in the corner, her arms crossed, tears streaming down her face. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just sick. I was dying. They didn't give me much time to process. The doctor said I had a severe infection in my chest cavity, and it had spread to my heart. He used words I didn't fully understand. Endocarditis, sepsis, emergency intervention. "You need surgery." "Immediately," he said. I remember asking how serious it was, and he just looked at me and said, "Life or death." That's when the panic set in. I'd never had surgery before, not even my appendix out. And now I was lying in a foreign hospital, about to go under the knife for something I didn't even know I had. Somjai came to my side and held my hand. "You be okay," she whispered. "I stay with you." I wanted to believe her. They wheeled me into a prep room, where nurses started shaving my chest and inserting more IVs. A different doctor came in, an older woman with kind eyes. She explained the procedure in slower English. They needed to open my chest, remove infected tissue around my heart valve and flush everything out. "It's a complex surgery," she said, "but you're in good hands." I nodded, but I wasn't really listening anymore. I was thinking about my life, about Thompson, the cold winters, my old job, my ex-wife who left me 10 years ago, about how I'd come to Thailand looking for something different, something easier. I'd met Somjai 8 months ago at a cafe near Siam Square. She was 23, working part-time studying business at a local college. She smiled at me and that was it. I was hooked. We started dating, and for the first time in years I felt alive. And now I might actually die. Before they wheeled me into surgery, a hospital administrator came in with a clipboard. She was polite, professional. "Mr. Leland, we need to discuss payment arrangements." I blinked at her. I have travel insurance, I said. It should cover this, right? She nodded. We'll contact your provider, but we need a credit card on file for any additional costs. I gave her my card, my hands shaking. How much are we talking? She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Let's focus on getting you healthy first. We'll sort out the details after. That should have been my first warning, but I was scared, and I was desperate, and I just wanted to survive. So I signed whatever they put in front of me. Somjai kissed my forehead as they wheeled me toward the operating room. I love you, she said. I wait for you. And then everything went black. I woke up 3 days later. At least that's what they told me. I had no sense of time. I was in a different room, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. My chest felt like it had been crushed. Every breath hurt. I tried to move, but tubes and wires held me down. Leland. I turned my head slowly. Somjai was sitting in a chair beside me, her face pale and exhausted. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. You okay, she said, but it sounded more like a question than a statement. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. She gave me some water through a straw. Surgery good, she said. Doctors say you very lucky. Lucky, that's what she said. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Over the next few hours, nurses came in and out, checking my vitals, adjusting machines, giving me medication through my IV. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching it happen to someone else. Somjai stayed by my side the whole time, holding my hand, whispering things in Thai I couldn't understand. A doctor came in later that afternoon. Not the same one from before, but another young guy with wire-rimmed glasses. Mr. Leland, the surgery went well. We removed significant infected tissue and replaced part of your heart valve. You'll need to stay in ICU for at least a week, then another 2 weeks in a regular room for observation and follow-up treatments. Follow-up treatments? I asked. My voice sounded like sandpaper. Yes, antibiotics, monitoring, possibly another minor procedure to ensure the infection is completely gone. I nodded, trying to process it all. When can I go home? He smiled. Let's take it one day at a time. That's when I should have asked about the cost. But I didn't. I was too focused on surviving, on getting through each painful breath. Somjai leaned in close after the doctor left. Don't worry about money, she said. Hospitals say they talk to insurance. You just rest, I wanted to believe her. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but all I could think about was the beeping machines and the feeling that I'd lost control of everything. After 10 days in the ICU, they moved me to a regular room. So I was starting to feel more like myself, though I was still weak and in pain. Somjai visited every day, bringing me food from outside because I couldn't stomach the hospital meals. We talked about small things, her work at the salon, the weather, her friends. She never mentioned money, and neither did I. I figured the insurance company was handling it. I was wrong. On my 11th day, a different hospital administrator came to my room. She was younger than the first one, dressed in a crisp white blouse and skirt carrying a leather folder. Mr. Leland, she said with a polite smile. I'm from the billing department. I need to go over some paperwork with you. My stomach dropped. Okay, I said. She sat down and opened the folder, pulling out several pages. This is an itemized bill for your care so far. She handed it to me. I looked at the number at the bottom. $180,000. I stared at it. My hands started shaking. There must be a mistake, I said. My voice came out weak. She shook her head. No mistake. This includes your emergency surgery, 10 days in ICU, medications, specialist consultations, imaging, lab work, and nursing care. I couldn't breathe. But my insurance... We've been in contact with your insurance provider, she said, her tone still calm and professional. Your policy covers a maximum of $50,000 for medical emergencies. The remaining balance is your responsibility. I felt the room spin. $130,000. I had maybe $120,000 in total savings. This bill alone would wipe me out, and I wasn't even discharged yet. How much more? I asked. How much more will this cost? She glanced at her papers. You'll need at least another 2 weeks of care, possibly more depending on your recovery. I'd estimate another $40,000 to $60,000. I looked at Somjai. She was standing near the window, her face pale, her eyes wide. She looked just as shocked as I felt. I can't afford this, I said. The administrator's smile didn't waver. "We can discuss payment plans, but the hospital requires a commitment to pay the full amount." I wanted to scream. I wanted to get up and walk out. But I was trapped in that bed, weak and helpless, with tubes still sticking out of me. "I need time," I said. "I need to figure this out." She nodded. "Of course. We'll give you a few days, but we will need a payment arrangement before you're discharged." After she left, Somjai came to my side. She was crying. "I'm so sorry, Leland. I didn't know it cost so much." I couldn't even look at her. I just stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out how my life had fallen apart so fast. Somjai called her family that night. I didn't want her to, but she insisted. "They help," she said. "My family know people. They can help." I was too exhausted to argue. The next day, her mother and older brother showed up at the hospital. Her mother was a small woman with graying hair and a warm smile. She didn't speak any English, but she held my hand and said something in Thai that Somjai translated as, "You family now. We take care." Her brother Thaksin was different. He was tall for a Thai man, maybe in his mid-30s, with slicked-back hair and a gold watch that looked expensive. He spoke decent English and carried himself with a confidence that made me uneasy. "Don't worry, Leland," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "We fix this. I know people who deal with hospitals. We negotiate." I didn't know what that meant, but I nodded. I barely knew Somjai's family. She'd mentioned them a few times, told me her brother worked in real estate or something like that, but we'd never spent much time together. Now they were here, taking charge of my life. Thaksin made several phone calls right there in my hospital room, speaking rapid Thai that I couldn't follow. Somjai and her mother talked quietly in the corner. I felt like an outsider in my own crisis. After about an hour, Thaksin came over to my bed. "Okay," I set up meeting with hospital billing. "Tomorrow morning. I go with Somjai, we talk to them, work out payment plan." "I should be there," I said. He shook his head. "You too sick. You need rest. We handle it." Somjai squeezed my hand. "It's okay, baby." Thaksin very good at this. He helped many people. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing control of my own situation, that decisions were being made around me, in a language I didn't understand. That night after they left, I lay awake thinking about everything. About how I'd ended up here, helpless and broke, dependent on people I barely knew. The next morning, Thaksin and Somjai met with the hospital administrators while I stayed in my room, too weak to attend. They were gone for over 2 hours. When they came back, Thaksin had a satisfied smile on his face. "Good news," he said. "We work out deal." I sat up as much as I could. "What kind of deal?" He pulled out some papers from his bag. "Hospital agree to payment plan. You pay over 3 years with interest. But you need to sign agreement today." I looked at the papers. Most of it was in Thai, with some English sections scattered throughout. "What's the interest rate?" I asked. 7%, Thaksin said. "Very fair." 7% didn't sound fair to me, but what choice did I have? "Can I see the full breakdown?" Thaksin flipped through the pages quickly, pointing at numbers. "This section surgery costs, this section ICU, this section medications and treatment. All here." It was moving too fast. I couldn't focus on the numbers. My head was still foggy from medication. "What happens if I don't sign?" I asked. Thaksin's smile faded slightly. "Hospital can hold you until payment arranged. Or they send to collections, damage your credit, make legal trouble. This way better. You sign, you go home, you pay over time." I felt trapped. Somjai was nodding, encouraging me. "It okay, Leland." "This best way." I signed. I signed everything they put in front of me, because I didn't know what else to do. Over the next week, more procedures were done. More specialists came to visit, a cardiologist, an infectious disease doctor, a physical therapist. Each one ran tests, prescribed medications, recommended treatments. Every time I asked if it was necessary, and every time I was told it was part of my treatment plan. I started to feel like a hostage, like they were keeping me there, running up the bill, because they knew I had no choice but to pay. When I finally got discharged 3 weeks after my initial admission, the total bill had ballooned to $340,000. I stared at the final invoice, my hands shaking. $340,000 for one surgery and 3 weeks in a hospital. It was more money than I'd made in 5 years of working. More money than I had. More money than I could ever pay back. Somjai helped me into a wheelchair. I could barely walk. We go home now, she said softly. But I didn't have a home anymore. Not really. I couldn't return to my apartment. I couldn't afford the rent, not with the hospital payments looming over me. Somjai suggested I stay with her family while I recovered and figured out my finances. I didn't have a choice. Her family lived in a modest house on the outskirts of Bangkok, far from the tourist areas and expat neighborhoods I was used to. It was a small place, 2 bedrooms, with peeling paint and a corrugated metal roof. Somjai's mother slept in one room, and Somjai and I shared the other. It was barely big enough for a mattress on the floor. The first few days were awkward. Her mother was kind, cooking meals for me, making sure I had water and medicine. But we couldn't communicate. She spoke no English and I spoke no Thai. We just smiled at each other and nodded. Thaksin visited often, too often. He'd show up unannounced, usually in the evening, and sit with me in the small living area. "How you feeling, Leland?" he'd ask. "Better," I'd say, though I wasn't. He'd nod, then start asking about my finances. "So your pension, how much each month?" 2,800, I told him. He did the math in his head. "And savings? How much you have left?" I hesitated. "After insurance paid their part, maybe 95,000. He whistled. "Not much." "I know," I said quietly. "You need to pay hospital 4,500 a month for 3 years, plus interest. That's 7,000 total each month." My chest tightened. "I thought you said the payment was lower." He shrugged. "That was estimate. This actual number. You signed contract." I felt sick. $7,800 a month would drain my pension and force me to dip into my savings every single month. I'd be broke within a year. "I can't afford that," I said. Thaksin leaned back. "Then you need to sell something." "Do you have property in Canada?" I did. A small condo in Thompson that I'd bought years ago. It was worth maybe 150,000 if I was lucky. "That's my only asset," I said. "My safety net," Thaksin shrugged. "Then you need to find another way." The pressure was suffocating. I was trapped in a house that wasn't mine, in a country that wasn't mine, with a debt I couldn't escape. The phone calls started 2 weeks after I moved in with Somjai's family. The hospital's collections department. They were polite but firm, reminding me of my payment obligations. "Mr. Leland, your first payment of $4,500 is due this week. Have you set up automatic payments?" I hadn't. I could barely think straight. I set it up over the phone, watching my bank account drain in real time. The next month, the same thing. And the month after that. By the 3rd month, I'd burned through $15,000 of my savings just trying to keep up. I couldn't afford to go back to Canada even if I wanted to. My health was still fragile, and traveling seemed impossible. Plus, what would I go back to? An empty condo and a pension that couldn't cover my debts? Somjai started working longer hours at her salon job. She'd leave early in the morning and come back late at night, exhausted and barely able to speak. When she was home, she was distant, short-tempered. I tried to help around the house, washing dishes, sweeping floors, but I was still weak. I needed to rest often. I needed medication. I needed things I couldn't afford. One night, I overheard Somjai arguing with Thaksin in the next room. They were speaking Thai, but I caught my name. "Leland." And then the word for money. Again, over and over. I couldn't make out the rest, but the tone was clear. They were fighting about me. About money. When she came back into our room, I asked her what was wrong. "Nothing," she said, her eyes red. "Just family stress." I didn't believe her. "Are you fighting about me? About the money?" She looked away. "My family help you, Leland. They do a lot. It's just hard for everyone right now." I felt like a burden, like I was dragging everyone down with me. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city outside. I thought about everything I'd lost. My independence, my savings, my dignity, and I wondered how much more I could lose before there was nothing left. Thaksin showed up one evening with a solution. He sat down across from me in the cramped living room, his face serious. "Leland, I've been thinking about your problem. I know someone who can help. I was too tired to be skeptical." "Who?" "Private lender. He worked with foreigners in difficult situations. Good terms, better than hospital. I frowned. What kind of terms? 18% interest, but you pay off hospital in one payment. Then you just make smaller payments to him each month. No more hospital calling you. No more stress. 18% sounded high, really high. But I was desperate. Why are you suddenly so involved in my finances? I asked. Thaksin looked offended. You with my sister. You family now. Family take care of each other. That's how we do in Thailand. I felt guilty for questioning him. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe he really was just trying to help. I'd need to meet this lender first, I said. Of course, Thaksin said. I set up meeting for tomorrow. The next day, Thaksin drove me to a high-rise building in central Bangkok. We took an elevator to the 15th floor and entered a sleek office with glass walls and modern furniture. The lender was a middle-aged Thai man in an expensive suit. He spoke perfect English, his accent almost British. Mr. Leland, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Please sit. Thaksin has told me about your situation. I think we can help. He laid out the terms clearly. He'd loan me $250,000 to pay off the hospital debt completely. I'd then make monthly payments to him over 5 years at 18% interest. What happens if I can't make the payments? I asked. He smiled, the kind of smile that made my skin crawl. We'll work something out. We're flexible. We understand that life happens. We're not a bank. We're people helping people. That should have been a red flag, but I was exhausted. I was desperate, and I just wanted the hospital to stop calling me. My gut screamed at me not to sign, but I did it anyway. I signed the papers and he transferred the money to my account that same day. I paid off the hospital that evening. For the first time in months, I felt a brief sense of relief. It didn't last long. Within 2 months, I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. The lender's payments weren't what Thaksin had promised. They weren't smaller, they were higher. $4,200 a month, almost double what Thaksin had told me. When I called him to complain, he acted confused. Maybe I misunderstand, he said. But you signed contract. This what it say? I checked the contract. It was in English, but the terms were buried in legal jargon. He was right. I'd signed it without reading it carefully. I was burning through my savings faster than ever. I stopped eating out, stopped buying anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. I ate the cheapest street food I could find. I stopped taking taxis. I walked everywhere, even though my chest still hurt. Somjai became more and more distant. She spent more time with her family and less time with me. When I tried to talk to her about our future, about what would happen when my money ran out, she changed the subject. We figure it out, she'd say. But we never did. One evening I checked my bank account and nearly had a heart attack. There was a $12,000 withdrawal I hadn't made. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transaction history. It had been transferred to a Thai bank account I didn't recognize. I confronted Somjai that night. Did you take money from my account? She looked away, her eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry, Leland. I had to. You had to, why? She broke down, sobbing into her hands. My brother. He say my mother needs surgery. Emergency surgery. He say if we don't pay, she'd die. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. $12,000 for a surgery. Why didn't you tell me? I was scared, she cried. I didn't want you to say no. My mother, she everything to me. I was furious. I was heartbroken. I need that money back, Somjai. I'm going broke trying to pay off this debt. She shook her head. We don't have it. It already gone. Then where did it go? She didn't answer. She just kept crying. That's when it hit me. The family emergency, the helpful brother, the private lender with his perfect English and his flexible terms. It had all been orchestrated. They'd played me from the beginning. Somjai's mother probably didn't even need surgery. And I just handed them $12,000 because I was too trusting, too desperate, too stupid. I moved out the next week. I couldn't stay there anymore. I couldn't look at Somjai without feeling betrayed. I rented a cheap room in a rundown building in a less desirable part of Bangkok. It was a single room with a shared bathroom down the hall. The walls were thin, the bed was hard, and the air conditioning barely worked, but it was mine. I was down to $15,000 in savings. I'd spent the rest trying to keep up with the loan payments. I still owed the lender over 200,000. The math was simple. I was never going to pay it off. Samjai called me once crying, saying she was sorry. My family, they pressure me. I didn't know how bad it would get. I love you, Leland. Please come back. I didn't believe her anymore. I hung up. I sat alone in that small room, staring at the peeling paint on the walls, and thought about my life. I'd come to Thailand looking for freedom, for romance, for a simple life on a modest pension. Instead, I'd gotten trapped in a nightmare of medical debt, cultural manipulation, and betrayal. I thought about my condo in Thompson, the life I'd left behind. My friends, my routine, the cold winters that I used to complain about. I wondered if I could ever go back, or if I was stuck here forever, broken. I contacted the Canadian embassy, explaining my situation. They were sympathetic but blunt. "We can help you get home, Mr. Leland, but we can't help with your debts. That's between you and Thailand." Going home meant abandoning the debt. It meant ruining my credit. It meant admitting complete failure. But staying meant drowning slowly. I didn't know which was worse. I defaulted on the loan payments after 3 months. I just stopped paying. I couldn't afford it anymore. The lender's representatives started showing up at my building. They weren't threatening, not directly. They were polite, persistent, professional. "Mr. Leland, we understand you're having difficulties. Let's discuss your options." They suggested I sell my Canadian property. They asked if I had family who could help. They reminded me of my obligations, of the contract I'd signed, of the consequences of default. I stopped answering my phone. I stopped answering the door. I survived on my pension, eating cheap street food and avoiding anything that cost extra. My health started to deteriorate again slowly. I developed anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake at night, my chest tight, my mind racing. I stopped leaving my room except to buy food. I didn't see anyone. I didn't talk to anyone. I was completely alone. I thought constantly about the surgery, about whether it had even been necessary, about whether the hospital had inflated the costs because I was a foreigner, about whether they'd done extra procedures just to run up the bill, about whether Somjai had ever really loved me, or if she'd just seen an opportunity. I'd never know for sure, and that was the worst part, the not knowing. One afternoon I sat on my small balcony, watching the chaotic Bangkok traffic below. The motorbikes weaving through cars, the street vendors selling food, the tourists taking photos, everyone living their lives while mine had fallen apart. I thought about my friends back in Canada, the ones who'd warned me about moving abroad, about getting involved with younger women, about trusting too easily. I didn't listen. I thought I knew better. I thought I was different. I thought I could make it work. And now, at 58 years old, I was starting over with nothing. The surgery saved my life, that's what they told me. But it also destroyed it. I was alive, but I wasn't living. I couldn't go back to Canada without facing financial ruin. I couldn't stay in Thailand without drowning in debt. I was stuck in between, trapped in a life I didn't recognize. I thought about the moment I woke up in that hospital room, staring at the bill. I thought about Somjai standing there, watching me realize what had happened. I used to think the worst thing that could happen to you in a foreign country was losing your passport. But I was wrong. The worst thing is waking up alive and realizing you can't afford it. That the very thing that saved your life is now the thing that's going to destroy it. And that, I realized, sitting on that balcony watching the city move on without me, might be the cruelest part of all, because I was alive. My heart was still beating. But everything that made life worth living was gone. The money, the love, the future I'd imagined, all of it gone. And all I had left was a scar on my chest and a debt I'd never fully pay. I spent my entire retirement savings. I destroyed my financial future. I lost the woman I thought I'd grow old with. And for what? To learn a lesson I should have already known. That trust is expensive. That love can be a transaction. That, in some places, being a foreigner makes you a target, not a guest. I don't blame Thailand. I don't even blame Somjai, not entirely. I blame myself for being naive, for thinking that moving to another country would solve my problems, for thinking that a young woman could love an old man without expecting something in return, for signing documents I didn't understand, for trusting people I barely knew. for believing that I could escape my old life without consequences. The surgery saved my life, but it took everything else. And now I sit here alone in a room that's not mine, in a city that's not home, with a future that doesn't exist, still breathing, still alive, but not living. And that might be the worst punishment of all.